Ready? Teddy bear, you ready? Hello,
Oh,
already there, ready to go. Um,
hello, Eddie.
shall we say hello and welcome to Pet Talk? Okay, hello and welcome to Pet Talk. And our wonderful guest today is Joan Ranquet. But Teddy, I think we forgot to say who we are. Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
right. So you are Teddy, and I am Anna. And as I've said, our wonderful guest today is Joan Ranquet. Hello, Joan.
Hi. Hi, Teddy.
Well, we are delighted that you are here because I think that if Teddy needed help, you would be a great person to come to, because you have written this amazing book, which is called Emotional Freedom Technique for Animals. And here it is. And, you know, it was one of those reads where I just thought, wow, all the way through, all the way through. So I guess we could begin with emotional freedom technique itself, because many of us are familiar with it, EFT, for humans. But for those who are not familiar with what emotional freedom technique is, would you please tell us what it is?
Yeah, I would love to. So, emotional freedom technique or EFT tapping is tapping on acupressure points. And these acupressure points are connected to meridians. And in traditional Chinese medicine, these meridians are connected to organ systems, and all of the organ systems are connected to emotions. And so these particular points have been chosen because they're calming points. In traditional Chinese medicine, there can be tonifying points, and there can be points that, kind of get things going again. But these are calming points. And so essentially, what you're doing is telling a challenging story while tapping on feel good points. And when I say challenging story, I mean, like if we have an emotional or I mean, a lot of humans use it for things like weight loss or trauma, or veterans are using it for trauma. Um, or if you're in a bad breakup, or anything emotional, because it is emotional freedom technique. So it's releasing the deep trapped emotions around any situation, and yet we can still remember it, but we're not triggered by the story.
So that makes sense in terms of humans. We're using acupressure points, and we're tapping on them. That has a calming effect, and that can help us then to perhaps change behavior or address difficult behavior, which perhaps presumably is why we would it would result in weight loss, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But come, Joan, animals.
Absolutely, because they have the same acupressure points, and so it's I had learned acupressure in the 90s, and I had learned EFT in the early 2000s, and I know there's other people that also do it, but I put together these points because I knew that they would be I mean, and they're pretty standard, the same points that most other animal people are using, but the same, they're almost identical. It's still bladder 1, triple heater 23, stomach 1, all calming points. So it it works for animals also.
Well, we do know, I mean, many of us know that our dogs, right behind the ears, um, that if we gently massage, that is a very soothing place for them. So this is making sense. How did you make what made you change from working with humans, using EFT, to animals? Where was the light bulb moment that went, oh, I can do this with animals?
Well, first I was so I'd been an animal communicator forever, and then and I learned EFT for me. I mean, I had it done on me because I couldn't sleep. And so I ended up thinking what I only went to an appointment once and then I was sleeping again. So I started thinking, I have so many clients where the dog has been reactive or the dog has been attacked. So the human on the leash would be reactive also, right? Like they would tense up and then that would make the dog more tense. And it was just a bad combination. And the other place where I thought I would learn it for was when a human comes off, when a horse and rider have an accident, and that it's terrifying for the rider to get back on. And often their whole, their fear, horses are prey animals. So the fear that the human feels in the saddle is like having the worst predator on your back. So then that's just going to make that worse. So I got trained, I got certified for humans because in 2001, 2002, because I thought I could help at least the human. And so for several years, I did that. And then, I thought about these points are the same. And then I go on with the day. These points are the same, I kept thinking, and I just let it go. But there was one horse that I tell the story in the book named Shakespeare. And he was this big, huge, beautiful warm blood. And he'd been a client of mine. And his horse trainer was also my horse trainer. And so Shakespeare was owned by a woman named Karen. Karen, they were out at a horse show in South Florida in Wellington, which is a big horse show area. And we had, I'd had several sessions with this horse. I knew him to be a gentle giant. But Chris, the trainer, called me one day and said, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe it, but Shakespeare is going after ponies. You need to come help." And I was like, "Chris, I can talk to him on the phone." And he's like, "No, you have to come help." I was like, "Okay." So I canceled everything and drove out to the horse show. And they're in the warm-up ring. And if you've ever seen a warm-up ring, it's full of, people getting ready to go into their horse show. So it's full of jumps, and it was full of little girls on ponies. And here comes Shakespeare like some dinosaur. Like if you've ever seen horse teeth come at you, it's quite a terrifying sight. And to see this gentle giant going after these little girls, I'd never seen anything like it. And Chris, who is the most beautiful rider on the planet, couldn't control this horse. So I thought, well, at the very least, I'll go do animal communication. So, but I had this inkling I was going to do some tapping. So I said, let's go somewhere where no one's going to see what we're doing because it looks weird, So we got down to this barn aisle where nobody was, and it was dark. So I communicated with Shakespeare, and I found out that when he was weaned, when he was taken away from his mother, he had been thrown out into a pasture with ponies, and these ponies were really mean to him. They were just trying to find all horses do it. I was just outside with my horses, and they're still kind of mean to the new guy. Not mean, but they pick on you. But this would be traumatizing if you had just been weaned and you'd been loved. And he felt like he had been weaned too young, which I think all horses do, and they probably are. So he was going after the ponies before they could get him because he still identified with being really small and getting picked on. And so I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try it. And when I communicated with him, like I said, they found out that he had been traumatized by ponies and that he really, really hated them. And so I started out the tapping with his voice, and I started tapping on the inside of his eye, all the same points, just saying, "I hate ponies. I hate ponies. I hate ponies." And it's sort of like when you're telling a challenging story, and you're with these feel good points, you can just see them go, they just come down a notch. And so I worked through the whole thing. I hate ponies, and then I forgive the ponies, and I'm going to be calm and safe when I go out into the arena. So we all walked out with him, and there were plenty of ponies still in the arena. And he definitely gave them that side eye, but he didn't go after them. And then within the next 6 months, he was moved across the barn aisle from a pony. And before he died, he was retired with a pony next to him, and he was often seen, they were grooming each other. So that was one tapping. And so then I went, okay, there were no human certification for animals, right? So I got 2 more certifications over the next several years, and just really kind of created the first program for tapping on animals. There's 1 or 2 others, but they're not as, I go into it like I do in that book.
Just thinking about it, listening to you, you're an animal communicator. So is it a prerequisite that in order for this to work, that you have to have that telepathic link with the animal?
No, and I'll tell you, so for one thing, it's emotional freedom technique. It's not, I don't know what to say when I'm tapping on my animal technique, right? So if we were to look at any given situation, we're going to look at, like, there's fear, the main feelings. So we're going to tap on those feelings. That's the first part of the answer. And the second part of the answer is, one of the reasons I wrote the book was so that in there I have all these, questions you can ask yourself about your own feelings, and you can tap on yourself. And then questions you could ask, and I have people just like close their eyes and imagine they are their dog and say to themselves, if I were Teddy, what am I feeling at this moment? And it's just like, it's simple, simple, simple.
So the question I would ask, because I could hear the skeptic saying, yes, but are you projecting onto the animal your feelings? What would you say to that?
I would say that, there are plenty of scientists like Mark Bekoff and Temple Grandin, and this another scientist named, I can never say his name. Anyway, he's a big behaviorist. I've quoted all 3 of them in my last 2 books, and they really go into the truth of animals is they have very simple, not, it can be deep, but very simple emotions. So if you see a dog who's on the leash and won't go forward, you can pretty much guess it's fear. You wouldn't have to be a skeptic or an animal communicator to, you know what I mean? Like, anybody would come to that. So if you keep it really simple, you can't go wrong, right? Like, if you see somebody who's overly exuberant and you need them to calm down, you could just go to start with, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, I'm so excited, and move to, I can calm myself, I can calm, I'm safe, I can calm. So it's almost, any observer could really do this. I've organized the questions in a way that has a flow.
So when you're tapping and you are repeating a statement, that statement is about releasing the emotion first and foremost. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Yeah.
releasing the emotion, and as you're releasing the emotion, then you're changing the statement to where you want to get to emotionally.
Yeah. And I don't ever like to use the words positive or negative, and particularly with animals, right? Like fear saves their life. It saves their life, hands down. So anger, they protect themselves. So we don't want to say, oh, we're working with the negative emotion and then we're moving to the positive emotion. What we're doing is we're moving from the big challenge that's inhibiting them from moving forward in any way to the outcome. So, the outcome would always be that I feel safe, that I'm calm, that I'm having fun with my person, that I'm, all of the things that we get to be together when things are good.
What I find really interesting, particularly when when you were talking about Shakespeare, the horse, is that you were able to work with him in a moment of high intensity emotion.
Mm.
Now, those of us who have any experience of being with an animal when they're in a state of high arousal, particularly anxiety, and especially then if it's being expressed as aggression, as it was in Shakespeare's case, it's difficult to imagine getting to that point so quickly with where he's calm, because when they're in that state, I was going to say you can't reason with them,
I
but it's very, it's difficult to distract them. So I guess the equivalent of working with, let's say, a dog or another animal when they're in that state, one of the things that we always do is try to avoid getting into that state and distract them or help them so that they don't get to that state, because we know that once they get into that state, I guess it would be the equivalent of somebody being hysterical. They're just in that highly charged emotion, and it's so hard to move them out of that. So listening to you, that sounds actually miraculous.
Well, okay. I love this because no one's ever talked to me about this. And it's one of the most important things. So, number one, you said something very key. We took him away from the scene, so he was distracted already, right? Now he's walking into a dark, it's an empty barn aisle. He's looking around. Are my friends here? You know what I mean? So now we've got his mind off of it. And I agree. There are so many times when animals, adrenals go off and you can't bring them down. And animals that repeatedly go into that state, that becomes their normal state. But in his case, he was a pretty calm guy. He was a gentle giant. So we distracted him by getting him away from there. Secondly, I do a lot of energy work before I even come to, when I wake up, I do a scalar wave and then I meditate. I mean, it's just, and then I work out and then you know what I mean? Like by the time I show up somewhere, I'm a pretty calming presence. My old horse trainer, Chris, is a ridiculously calming presence. His owner, Karen, was a little amped, but it 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 is a couple of things I think at work. Number one, we were all calm, distracted him. Number two, our intention with this. Intention is everything. And no matter what healing modality you use, they all share intention. So our intention was huge. Our intention was to bring him out of this state. And then third, it really is the power of those points, those particular points.
Yes, I think it's good that you're clarifying the process, which was take him away from the situation. That's
Mhm.
important. And I think that's the key, because when I've had instances where Teddy has seen something that is very frightening to him, he goes straight into aggression mode. And I
Mhm.
do remove him from that situation. In fact, I avoid situations of that kind as much as I can. But occasionally, you know, a Rottweiler is going to come out of nowhere, and
Yeah,
and it's very difficult for us to get him away because already he's very, very aggressive, which sometimes makes the other dog aggressive, which is not great, um,
right.
to say the least. So it's getting, but nevertheless, I always work to get him out of the situation, and then see what I can do to calm. But what I think is so singular about that situation that you were describing is that not only did you get him to be calm afterwards, he never went back to it around ponies again. That's
Yeah,
what I think is absolutely amazing, because it's one thing to get him to calm down. It's quite another for it to be a permanent change in emotional perspective, where he's no longer afraid of those ponies. And I think that many of us who have dogs who react in certain situations and are otherwise nice, placid, happy dogs would give anything to know how to get to that point. And those who have reactive dogs, who are reactive generally to, because they're very sensitive for whatever reason, it would be also interesting to see what happens with them. So tell us more about how that's possible, Joan.
oh yeah, I have my own dog, Delilah, that I don't know if I put this in the book or not, but she was someone, she had two older sisters. She's 12 now. So when she came onto the planet, there was a border collie, German shepherd, and a lab that was, I don't know why my thumb is doing that, but it's a good story to tell apparently. Anyway, um so she had these two older sisters, and I'm prefacing this because this never even occurred to me, right? So I used to take her out on pack walks with like 17 to 20 other dogs every Tuesday at 9 a.m. I was at the trailhead with a dog trainer friend of mine, and I had taken her everywhere when I lived in Seattle. So I moved to down to Southern California, and I'm gonna have to plug in. I just realized, but I'll just finish this. I moved to Southern California, and I lost the one dog, and within a year I lost the next dog. And between the two losses, I'd gotten a puppy named Abby, who's so beta, it's not even funny. But Delilah, all of a sudden, at like age 4, started being leash aggressive or reactive, and really terrifying. Like the first time I saw it, I was terrified because she had never been that way. And it didn't occur to me for a long time that it was because she had these two older sisters that took care of everything. And suddenly now she's just with me, and I'm so used to having these dogs take care of everything, and I'm like, oh, look at the mountains, or oh, the ocean, right? I wasn't the leader that I talked about in my second book, be an emotional leader. Well, I wasn't being that thing. So, because she'd been so easy. I mean, she'd been so easy, the easiest dog to train on the planet. So now I have a huge problem. And the first, like, probably 10 times, I thought, this is circumstantial. Like, I couldn't admit to myself that I have a reactive dog. And so I would tap and I would do things sort of haphazardly. But the truth is, I did 3 main things. I changed her diet, which I knew to do immediately. Just totally calming foods. But I brought in a dog trainer, and I tapped with her a lot. And that combination of just like, we're doing this. And I put up pictures of her all over the house where she was with a million other dogs. I knew she loved dogs. That wasn't the thing. but she just was reactive on the leash. She somehow went from being super excited within a nanosecond to being, uh-oh. And that's what I worked on, is working with that excitement. And when, before the fear comes on. And so I tapped a lot, and I can literally, I've got the neighbors from hell, you know, the thumbs up agrees. And they've got dogs that, their dogs are beautiful, but they just let them bark at the fence, and it's like an acre long. So for me to walk out on my hike every other day, that direction means I have to go by some giant dogs just screaming, and all I have to do is say, leave it, and she's like, okay. And it was, I couldn't have even pictured that. So I had to do a lot of tapping on myself, because when I thought about that thing that I wanted, where she was peaceful and calm and safe, walking down the street with me, I couldn't even picture it anymore, because I got so used to this other terrifying thing. So yeah, the tapping really helps with reactive dogs. Really, really, really helps.
It's
And it's
interesting.
gone.
It's interesting that you talk about tapping on yourself. So how much, when you're working with animals, are you also working with the human side of the equation?
Well, in that situation with Shakespeare, that horse, I didn't, because I knew that was like the most bizarre circumstance. And that Chris, the writer, he was just going to blow it off as, okay, that was crazy, and carry on, right? Like that was never going to be part of his equation with that horse again. But when I think about, like, the first time that I saw my dog do that, I had shock. The next time I had it, I was embarrassed. The next time I had it, I was mortified and sad for her that I could maybe never take her somewhere. Like, if you think through all those feelings, then I would say, I would, when I work with people, I work with the person as much as I do the dog, because we have 10 times the feelings they have. They feel as deeply as we do, but we have a lot of nuances. Like, if they go after the neighbor, they're not going to be embarrassed. They're going to be like, yeah, but with us, here I write books about animals, and I've got this dog, like, horrifying. So yeah, I had to work my butt off, because there's no way I was going to have that dog. And I didn't want it for her. I mean, most of all, because of all the adventures we'd been on. I thought, I can't let that stop.
That's absolutely wonderful. And of course, ultimately, if if I want Teddy to not be afraid, it's not because of me, it's because of him. I want him to be a happy dog.
Yeah.
And, and he is 99% of the time. But there's those moments where he sees a dog that he's afraid of. And I would love for him to be more confident, to have that confidence that, yep, it's okay. I don't have to worry about that. That would be wonderful. And I think that's what we all want. Those of us who care for our animals, we want them to be happy. That's what we want. And this
I
is
always,
a very important point, isn't it?
yeah, I always say that if I died tomorrow, my animals would be sad, but they're super well adjusted. They'd be okay.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a wonderful thing. And I think too, it's interesting how you were talking about working through your emotions, because obviously we are affected by them, and they are affected by us. So it's very easy to get into that loop. Whenever, I mean, last about 2 weeks ago now it was, that Teddy had to go to the vet to have a tooth extracted. I knew he was going to be terrified. I did. And that was a devastating feeling for me
It's the
because
worst.
I couldn't prevent it from happening. I worked very hard to make his world as happy as possible. And here he was going to have to experience something that I knew he was going to hate with every fiber of his being. And as he was being examined before being taken away, he was trembling in my arms. This is, not something that makes me happy. But I had to work so hard to not make it worse. I had to work
Yeah,
so hard to keep my feelings, to keep my voice calm and steady and reassuring. But I know that he picked up on my feelings anyway. It was very clear the way he looked at me in the eye. He looked into my eyes, and I knew he knew. But of course, still, we even if they pick up on that feeling, it's important that we are as calm as can be. So to have a tool that helps us is also going to help them, and that's really crucial, isn't it?
it is. In I have a school for animal communication and energy healing, and we talk about, especially as a practitioner, to get as neutral as we can get so that we can help others to be neutral. But even if you were to just tap with, in front of him, I feel so helpless. I'm so helpless. I am helpless. I feel terrible. Oh my God, I feel terrible. I'm so sad for him. I can't help him. We have to go through with this. It's so sad. Like even that sort of thing, you're bringing your nervous system down.
Yeah, and that's something that obviously I would have been doing ahead of the vet visit,
Yes,
as it would have been a somewhat impractical exercise whilst the visit was
yes.
actually. But yes, but it's a wonderful thing, and you've given us so much food for thought. I'm so grateful for your time today, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and great questions.
Well, the book, everyone, that we have been discussing is called Emotional Freedom Technique for Animals and Their Humans, Creating a Harmonious Relationship Through Tapping. And here it is. I'll be putting a link to it in the description box. And Joan, if people want to get in touch with you, is there a website that they can visit?
Yes, it's joanranquet.com, JoanRanquet.com.
Wonderful. I'll be putting a link to that in the description box as well. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
And thank you all for watching. Now, next time, we're going to be looking at how to develop cognitive skills in our dogs. Until then, goodbye.